All right, we're going to bring the meeting back to order.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Queen Anne's County Commissioners Meeting. This is a public meeting that is being aired live on our local cable television station, QACTV 7. These immediate broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public meetings. In addition to our live audience this evening, we are providing remote options for citizens to watch and participate in county commissioner meetings. Citizens may watch our meeting live on our website at qac.org/live or on our television channel, BreezeLine Channel 7 and High Definition Channel 507. Citizens may also participate by joining the live Zoom meeting by going to qac.org/public comment. Citizens may also email comments to publiccomment@qac.org. Comments received will be summarized during the press and public comment period on this evening's agenda. We acknowledge everyone's participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. Press and public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes per person. If you do care to speak, please sign the sheet on the information table out in the lobby. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the Commissioner's review. We will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Jim Moran.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you can remain standing for a moment of silence for the 3 angels and the 3 heroes that lost their lives yesterday in Nashville. Thank you very much.
All right, Commissioners, our agenda for today's meeting, March 28th, along with the regular closed and sanitary commission meetings from March 14th have been circulated for review. Any additions or corrections?
Motion to amend the agenda to include 2 action items.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to approve the agenda as amended and the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very much.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Okay, we just completed a closed session under General Provisions, Article Section 3305B1 to discuss boards, commissions, and personnel. And I do believe we have a few motions as a result of that closed session.
Yeah, make a motion for the Broadband Advisory Commission to reappoint Allison Davids and Ed Cummins to an additional 3-year term, and to appoint James Benson, Jared Ricard, and Miles Randall to a 3-year term.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
All right. I move to appoint Gary Mangum to the Spending Affordability Committee. This term will begin immediately and expire on March 31st, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on this one item. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
I move to execute the contract with Bruce Bariano, lobbyist, to commence on July 1st, 2023, and expire on June 30th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay.
I move to approve a stipend in the amount of $1,800 per year for the Police Accountability Board members and the Administrative Charging Committee members.
Do we read all 3 at the same time, or do we have to do
Let's do them a second. They're different motions.
Okay. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? For the public, Todd, you want to give a little background for what this is and why we're doing it?
Sure. As a result of the General Assembly's motions and decisions last year, every county in the state of Maryland had to create a police accountability board to review essentially conduct of all law enforcement agencies in each jurisdiction. As a requirement for that, we have now established a police accountability board, which is a panel of 7 members, and an administrative charging committee that reviews and proposes charges for police officers that are charged with misconduct in the line of duty. There's also a trial board that if necessary, a charge would go to the trial board. These are all citizens, volunteers on these boards that would review the administrative charging committee's charges and make a final determination on that particular officer. So this is a brand-new series of boards and commissions, and they are fully operational at this time.
Very good. So that's where we have, basically, they're going to get a stipend, and this is what these motions are for. And the first one that we're discussing is a stipend in the amount of $1,800 per year for the police accountability board members and the administrative charging committee members. Any further discussion on this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
All right. I move to approve a stipend of $500 per trial for the trial board members and a stipend of $750 per trial for the trial board judge.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on this. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0.
I move to approve a $300 per diem for required training for the administrative charging committee members and the trial board members.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on this last item. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. There we go.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Okay, that brings us to our first press and public comment period on this evening's agenda. So thank you for taking the time to express your views to the County Commissioners. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments longer may be submitted in writing. The Commission respects your desire and right to convey your message freely. When you come forward, please speak clearly at the standing microphone. State your name, your address, and your topic of interest. And in keeping with the dignity of our office, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner.
Okay, first up on the list is Mr. Blanton.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Chris Blanton, live in Churchill. I came here a few weeks ago and I spoke on school funding. I guess it wasn't received very well, and at one point at the end of the meeting, I was called stupid. I don't think that's a real respectful way to treat voters, taxpayers, and citizens. I was told that I gave certain information that was specific to getting into a school shooting, stuff like that, because I was talking about how school funding, you need more infrastructure and more funding towards that as opposed to a $20 million Board of Education building. That's not necessary. School safety, there was just a shooting yesterday. That's all public knowledge. How many temporaries that there is in the county is public knowledge. Sheriff's Department, public knowledge. Everything that I said here was public knowledge, yet I was called stupid. How dare you, Mr. Corchiarino, call me stupid for bringing up things that need to be brought up. That's not right for someone to do that, call someone stupid, when all I want to do is keep kids safe, teachers safe.
Chris, it's not appropriate to,
But it's not appropriate to call me stupid either.
I understand, but we
And
don't need,
not
we
be
don't
told,
need to
hey, I
point out names
apologize.
of anybody.
But I was called stupid. Do you think that's okay?
Mr. Blayton, we have a statement that's done before press and public comment for a reason of the dignity of the office. Nobody said you were stupid.
Yes, sir, you did.
No,
Absolutely. You can
I
rewind the tape.
did not.
Yes, sir, you did.
All right, well, we're
I
done.
said a way of going about something
Go
is
ahead,
not
sir.
the right way. So
said
make
I
your
was stupid.
point, but you don't attack
My
me.
point is I'm not stupid. Don't attack me.
Okay, well, we've established that.
So back to it. The $20 million does not need to go into the Board of Education building. $20 million should go into school safety, school infrastructure, school resource officers. That's what I'm asking, is that we reallocate that money for better infrastructure in that aspect and not for a Board of Education building. I don't think that's necessary. And I wonder how many county residents actually know that $20 million is going to go into a Board of Education building when we still have kids learning in temporaries. So, thank you. I respect all of you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? We will close press and public. Very well.
We actually got 6 emails, but they're all exactly the same, so I'll read one for you, then list our names. I, Sheila Corsi Willis, would like to enter into public comment that I am in support of Paths of the Past walking the Kent Island Railroad on the meeting to be held Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. I would like to request the support of the Queen Anne's County Commissioners for this project to help keep the history of Kent Island alive. We got similar emails from Alexis Henderson, Sheila Willis, Nick Weidman, Kay Schultz, Julie Eaton, and Robert Willis.
Thank you. All right, we'll press some public comment, moving on.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, we can now move into our presentations for this evening, if you want to turn to tab number 6. And first up, we have Amy Moordock, Director of Planning and Zoning. So if you want to come on up, Amy, and I believe Vivian Swinson, our zoning administrator, is going to join her. So your presentation is in tab 6. Also, we have it up on the screen as well. And Amy, you have the
Have it right here.
advance
Yes.
button there?
If I
Okay.
can work it properly.
All right.
Good evening, and thanks for giving us this time slot this evening to update you on some projects. I know that you're pretty well informed about a lot of things that we do in the department, but we're here this evening to give you a full scope. And I'm going to try my skills right away. I want to start at the end.
With questions? No.
Any questions?
Everything that we're sharing with you this evening, all of the statistics that we're sharing with you on the projects that are completed, on the permits that are processed, long range and planning development review and the planning end, we accomplish all of these tasks with the full team that you have funded for us and given to us over the years. We're fully staffed. And we have a really strong team that assists Vivian and me to accomplish all the goals of the department and to serve the citizens of the community, to provide expeditious service. And we have a committed team that is really dedicated to serving the community, making sure that everyone's property rights and the financial investments that our citizens make when they walk through those doors are respected, and that we're being very cognizant of customer service. So I just wanted to start with our team. So Vivian and I head up the planning and zoning divisions, and we're supported by John Shelton, who manages the office. John is supported by his office coordinators on the planning end, specifically with Kathy Johnson and Kathy Maxwell and Ann Johnson and Sandy Carter. Between them, they staff the technical committee. Kathy Maxwell has long been the clerk to the Board of Appeals and the Liquor Board. She supports the planners and the inspectors and Vivian with Board of Appeals cases. She also supports the Liquor Board expertly with our newish liquor inspector, Mandy Calvert, who's been with us for a while. Our planners are led by our long-range planner on the development review side, Rob Gunter, who works with Steve Johnson and Doug Summers. Stephanie Jones heads up as our principal planner and heads up the long-range planning division with Rob Tracy. And then on Vivian's end, she has 3 zoning inspectors, Joe Pippin, Ken Southard, and Mike Olds. And they not only take care of inspections and enforcement, but they also staff the Board of Appeals, and Vivian assists them in those duties. We have 5 really strong permit technicians, and our permit tech supervisor, Kendall Larimore, assists Vivian in the management of those permit reviews. So I just want to acknowledge Debbie Towers, Caitlin Schisler, Megan Peak, Nicole Meikle, and Laura Foster. I don't think I left anyone out. But we have a wide range of years of experience with the county and with professional expertise. So we feel like we really have our bases covered, and we have a team that supports one another. So I wanted to start with that, because now that I go back to the beginning and talk about what we've been doing, you'll have the names that go with the projects. Okay, and I'll let Vivian start.
Okay, so right now, the new development, the major development is still going on at Four Seasons. Paris Retreat is the second development that's going on, and the other new houses are throughout the county, with the ski district still being a number of houses being built there. The other development that's going on is, with COVID, people work from home, so we had a lot of people retrofitting their houses for offices, playrooms for kids, and other things to make the house more accessible for being home 24/7. And then pools were a big uptake in permits.
Yeah, so to explain sort of that context is traditionally we average, what, like 16 to about 2,000?
Yeah, we were averaging between 1,600 and 2,000 permits a year, and then that went up to.
We're up now. We're up over 2,000 for the last 2 years. And also, likewise, you see since 2018, the surge in single-family dwelling permits, and that includes the multifamily that Vivian was just talking about. So the permit techs are busy.
And
And the inspectors. Okay. So in addition, on the planning side, our planning commission looked at citizen-sponsored text amendments last year. There were 5 compared, up from 3 the previous year. 2 of those have been adopted. They haven't all been successful. There were one text amendment that came from this board, another came from staff. This year we saw 16 comprehensive rezoning requests and a rezoning of the areas that were reduced through our growth area reduction and rezoned through the successful completion and implementation of our comprehensive plan. We've been consistent the last couple of years with major site plans, also with major subdivisions, but you see there's an uptick in concept plans in the last year, and we have a lot on the back burner. So you're going to see a surge in site plans in this next planning cycle. We changed our extension request policy. The code is pretty clear that a project, once it gets an approval, as long as it's moving forward, it doesn't need to come back for extensions, but it had been a standing policy that if the project hadn't begun within 6 months, you had to come back and get an extension. But we relaxed that policy to just follow the code, which gives applicants 2 years to get started with the site plan. So those numbers have changed. You probably are familiar with seeing a lot of extensions, and that's a customer service extension that we gave that eases that process. You know that we have a growth allocation request that's moving through the process. We didn't have one in 2021, and we have I just lost it. We have the growth allocation request, and it's going to be on a later slide, that is going before the Critical Area Commission soon. The Board of Appeals has had a lot of cases, and that's where a lot of staff time has been dedicated. As Vivian noted, some of the uptick in COVID-related construction projects required variances. So we had some of those. We've had conditional uses and 2 general appeals. There was, and those appeals are kind of rare, but we did have 1 appeal of a planning commission decision. I think there were 2 appeals of planning commission decisions. There was almost 300,000 square feet of commercial space approved in permits this year, and that is an uptick from 2021, which was just over significantly over 200,000 square feet. And again, we're averaging over 2,000 building permits every year. Armored storage, that's what left my head. That's our growth allocation that's currently going through the process. Bay Bridge Marina is another major mixed-use development site plan that is going through the process currently. Chesapeake Square is a 21-unit apartment complex that has received a concept review and is ready to come back this summer for a site plan review. And the Royal Farms, which was a highly controversial site plan, that project was tabled over concerns, safety concerns over the traffic on Route 8. I do know that the applicant is working to address those concerns and come back with a revised site plan. And some of the Board of Appeals projects are the Ingleside mining operation, which is in Phase 3. That received an approval, and
They've submitted a permit that's under review now, and it hasn't been approved yet.
the R.B. Baker and Sons major extraction, that was approved for concept plan and is pending Board of Appeals review. The Hole in the Wall Gang, which is a redevelopment of the Aspen site, that received a Board of Appeals approval for a youth camp for children who have serious medical conditions. That is an exciting project, that they received their conditional use to occupy the space as it is, but they have big plans for expansion, which will be wonderful for the community. That's going to involve probably growth allocation, and some of the updates in the Chapter 14 critical area program were contemplative of some of those needs as we're looking at that plan update.
Can any of that property be used for anything else besides the Hole in the Wall Gang?
No, not under the current approvals and under the current zoning. And that's why, to expand that use, which is their desire, that's why there will be further review. But that review is specific to that project. Any other proposed use would have to start from scratch because it's a resource conservation zone under the critical area. Hope Fellowship received an approval, and I believe they're ready to submit.
They are ready to submit their permit. They have, their grading permit's been issued, got issued in February, but they haven't broke ground yet. And it's off of 544, not far from the Royal Farms, going towards.
Advance the slide.
Yep, hurry up. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Did I go too far? No, I didn't. Eastern Shore Exodus is a project that had been approved a while ago, but then came back recently for some modifications. So it received a reapproval of its major site plan, and it has permits.
It has a grading permit to start the site construction.
And kind of exciting and timely, Slippery Hill also received their approvals. They have completed they submitted their permits, and we have a groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow. So that's nice. Ken Island Crossing. This is a project that received growth allocation about 10 years ago, and they've come back with a concept plan because they have changed a part of that original site plan. The use is a lesser impact, so it wasn't required to go back through the growth allocation process all over again, but it will have to do an updated adequate public facility study for the new use. So we're looking for that in the upcoming year. And here are a few more. The Whitetail Land Group is a major subdivision that came in for an amendment, and that wasn't an amendment to configuration or an addition of lots. That was an amendment to a yard buffer adjacent to agricultural land. Bluegrass Solar received a lot of attention this year. They had received their approval and have been under construction. Vivian can probably share some details about that process.
That project is about 99% complete. They have some landscaping items that they need to address and some stormwater. And then once those items are addressed, they will be issued an occupancy certificate.
And we hold bonds, because I know that has been a community concern. The landscaping has had to have been enhanced, some plantings replaced.
Yes.
And we continue to hold bonds to ensure the survivability of those plantings. So if you do get questions about that, we do inspect regularly, and we'll have to ensure survivability before any of those bonds are released. Also, the Postal Road Apartments, that's another project, a 30-unit apartment building complex, which is under construction.
It's under construction, yeah.
I don't know how many inspections they've had so far, but
They are still working on the structure itself. They haven't requested, the last I looked, it was like a framing on the second floor, so they're doing it floor by floor.
so I mentioned some of our text amendments. We had talked about our text amendment process because, like I had mentioned, we had 5 text amendments. We don't always receive completely well-conceived applications. Some people just have some ideas for text amendments, and then as the review continues, they may not cut the mustard, but these are 2 that were successful. One of them was a result of conversations that the applicant had with Vivian to begin with.
The Ken Island Yacht Club.
Where there was an identified need for this limited RV parking under specific circumstances. We do not write text amendments that were review text amendments that are site-specific. So you have to be very careful when a text amendment is submitted that its applicability doesn't set a precedent or isn't a spot zoning request. So this application of this code is applicable to in the WVC district to bona fide fraternal organizations in the district. So it serves a need, and it also allows is equitable and allows for this use. Additionally, this was a tricky application from 2021, and this is a conditional use for a utility scale solar project that has a basis in our approved district. We have the utility scale solar overlay district where we allow these utility scale projects. This application would allow for an expansion beyond the district as long as a portion of the project is located within our mapped district. This was favorably supported mainly in light of case law that has begun to weaken local jurisdictions' authority over siting, and it was decided that this was probably a reasonable compromise to ensure that we still had a voice at the table to make sure that our zoning standards were being enforced. We haven't seen an application yet specific to this need, but we're also hoping that showing this level of flexibility will put us in good standing if we ever need to be directly involved in a certificate of public convenience and necessity case with a public utility law judge, to show that we have been attempting to address this need. We did update our fee structures recently, and we brought that before you. There were some aspects of our fee schedule that were unclear to applicants, especially as relates to amendments to plans that have already been approved. So we made sure that that was very clear and consistent between projects that are coming back for amendments, whether they've been constructed or have not been constructed. We're also continuing, and that was a joint effort with multi-departments, with the Department of Public Works, and we continue to collaborate with other departments to implement project review. And in this case, we're working with DPW and Parks and Rec to find projects within the county where we can utilize some of our critical area afforestation money to meet those requirements. So we're required to plant on public properties when we collect fees. Excuse me. And so we're working to find appropriate locations with our colleagues throughout the county. Stephanie and Rob and the rest of the staff continue to update the Chapter 14. Excuse me. Sorry, I had strep throat last week, so I'm over it, but I still have some side effects. So we're working to meet that goal. Thank you. To update the critical area program and to take into account the Woodlands text amendment that we also asked you to allow us to fold it into that plan. And we'd promised to bring something before you in the summer, and we're still on course to do that. We're also partnering with the Economic Development and Tourism team to, as a part of our zoning code update, there are a lot of things we want to address, but one of the things we want to address is our agritourism industry. We had attempted to put forward a text amendment to address alcohol production facilities about 2 years ago. That didn't quite work out the way we would have hoped. So in conversations with our economic development team, we thought, yeah, this would be a great idea if we brought in a consultant to help us to maximize that land use and make sure that it's consistent with our updated comp plan and with our zoning. So with that said, I'm almost wrapping up. We have completed the comp plan update. I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time on this because you were very directly involved. It was a 2-year process, and we did wrap it up in 2022 with the enactment of the comprehensive rezoning requests that were very specific. And some of those zoning changes, we're now in a position where we're starting to report out on our implementation of the comp plan already. We're hoping to have an implementation report in this year's annual report. There won't be much to report on yet because we enacted it in May. But we are already working on some items, and we're already in a position where we're looking to update the code. And we know we have some very specific priorities connected to our mixed-use development, our Main Street zoning districts, and our sewage policy challenges. And so these are our most pressing needs, and we want to address them first. So that is next on our horizon. And this is the team that's going to get it done. So. Oh.
So what is the status on the Marydale solar project that was approved 3 years ago? Have they run out of their timeframe for development there? I mean, because you have to re-up after so many years after you get your CPCN through and you get approval.
Is this the Jones Farm?
Yeah.
That's coming back. So they hadn't received their CPCN. They have now received it.
Okay.
And we're looking to, they're coming back for a site plan review this summer.
And that'll be the largest one we've had in the county, correct? I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that's 400.
600 acres.
It's
Huh?
600?
I think so. I think it was 100. I think it's close to 100 megawatt, maybe even a little bit more. So, okay. But that one didn't meet with any push. I mean, it got through all the law judge and everything. I wasn't at that one, and nobody showed up to it. So,
Do you want to interject anything on the legislation side and what's going on and where those bills are that we,
HB 692.
right, the ones that they're going to usurp all of our powers, basically?
Explain what HB.
Your
House Bill 692. Yeah.
Oh,
So-
referencing the solar, you mean?
yes.
Yes, so the solar bill, we've been very involved. There is a House Bill
692.
692 that basically mandates that local jurisdictions issue permits for utility-scale solar projects. There's a lot of other language included in the bill, but the bottom line is that a local jurisdiction must issue permits. So through MACO, we've been involved, but also our planning attorney, Chris Drummond, has been at the table with us and individually meeting with MACO and legislators to discuss the step that we need to be cognizant of before we get to permits, which is following local zoning practices. And in our case, we have very clear zoning, we have reasonable zoning. We have put forward suggested language. I sat on a MACO subcommittee where we put forward reasonable language, and Chris Drummond did likewise. I don't think that language was included in any amendments moving forward, and the bill right now, I don't know its status. It will be pushed on to the Senate, and
I mean, as of now, it hasn't passed the House, out of the House yet. But, I mean, I guess the biggest problem we have with it now is the fact that they're running up against the clock for the 2025 mandate to have 50% renewable. And we're only at about 15 to 18. And over the last 2 years, you've seen more bills come in that are trying to strengthen the state's position to get to that 50%, which are typically going to usurp county control over a lot of it because they need to get to that 50%. So I think this is just the beginning. This is the camel's nose under the tent to be just inundated with stuff over the next at least 2 sessions to be able to meet this goal. It's impossible to meet it. The building timeframes could never meet it at this point. You could never get there in 2 years. I mean, we're in 2023, and they got to be built in 2025. Right. So that's why I asked about the Jones Farm, because that's a pretty big project, but it's still only 100 megawatts. I mean, it's really not
Well,
even a dent.
and what the public may not know or may know, that we adopted, I believe it's 2,200 acres in a zoning for where we wanted solar to go, with our regulations, with our buffers. And what this bill basically will do, will usurp all of our powers, and wherever mega solar wants to go, it'll go. We won't be able to control where it goes. And I will say that Jay Falstad has worked very diligently on trying to defeat this bill and did a little bit of the math, and it comes up to about 35,000 acres of solar that the state will need to get them to the number they want to be, 35,000. And if you divide that over 23 counties, that's where we came up with 2,200 acres, basically. Well, it looks like that it could very well all be forced upon the Eastern Shore, where it's flat, where they don't have to clear trees, it's flat, they get their biggest bang for their buck. And we will lose a lot of fertile farmland. And I'm for property rights, so if that farmer wants to do that, that's all good and well, but I think that the state needs to also kick in. If we're going to take on the burden, the majority of the burden for the state with solar, then the state ought to be doing something for us. So, that's one of the discussions they're having, but, I hope that these bills die or get into committee in another year, so.
that's,
But I just think they're going to come back again. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I think
right.
because last year they had something similar to this, but it didn't really go this far to just say, you know what, you're just going to permit. Last year it was, okay, we're going to reach out and we'll work with the counties, and if it's reasonable, we'll move forward. But now it's just, nope, you're going to permit if we say so at the state level. And then, I mean, that's literally just basically getting down to the point that they're going to point where the solar's going to go.
We'd like to have a little teeth in that process. I mean, obviously with the buffers. I mean, with the way that we have those buffers set up now for solar array, I mean, by the time those buffers are grown up, you can't even see the solar arrays from the roads and that by design is really what our goal was. And so that's what we're fighting for at this point, is to have some seat at the table when it comes to the mandates of building these things. At least we get some say.
and our zoning illustrates a reasonable attempt and illustrates reasonable use, and that had been a part of the CPCN process, was to look at a local jurisdiction's zoning. Is it reasonable? And if it is, it should be given due consideration. And so the due consideration aspect is what we're fighting for, and the equity in the application of reaching that goal. If we work this hard to have a reasonable option for this land use and to support this state goal, then there should be equity.
Absolutely.
Well, plus, I don't think they've exhausted all their other options, school parking lots, brownfields. And I know there's talk of chicken houses. We've got enough of them over here that if they were properly supported, you could put them on there, which is not disturbing any other land that is there under the use it's under. I mean, you go to the college, they have that nice, the way they did that solar on that parking lot affects nothing, does a great job over there.
Well, you know, the
Got plenty
the
of room
state's
on the
been
high
very
school.
innovative in some things and some things not. But, I mean, we have pollution credits, you know, we have carbon credits, there ought to be solar credits. I mean, you know, I think that
Well,
that's.
you talked about that one time, and,
Yeah.
you know, using it for whip credits,
Well,
just strictly.
that's another
I mean,
thing. We haven't got to that, you know, that, again, it's the best BMP practice is solar. So that qualifies for, you know, if you're not putting down chicken manure and fertilizer and everything else, we ought to get the credits for, that's a lot of acreage.
Yeah.
And that goes towards our whip, and we're already out in front on the whip, and I'd like to see us either further out in front, so.
Well, we had that conversation, it's been a few years, but maybe it's time with maybe the new governor, or sit down with his new staff over there and have the conversation again and see what kind of traction we can get with it, because it does make sense. You're not using it for farmland, so you have no, it's negligible on the runoff,
Right.
what it's doing to the streams and rivers, so.
And we need those credits now.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Vivian, you staying out of trouble?
Yes, I always
Awesome,
do.
awesome.
Yes.
She was the first person I met when I came to Queen Anne's County. Came in and got my permit for building my house from Vivian, so.
You should have denied the permit. See what you got now?
Had you said no, this would be a different place.
You never know, you never know who you run into, Vivian, you never know. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, well,
March on and keep up the
job,
great work.
Amy, I would
Thank you.
just say on behalf of our great first responders, there is a concern if one of these transmitters catches on fire, that sucker's gonna burn for a week, for days.
That was a
So,
bill that didn't.
You know,
make
there
it.
needs to be a plan.
The conversation's being had, they didn't put a bill in for it, per se, it was floated, but it's definitely gonna be a future conversation.
It was a lithium battery bill.
It was, but it was
But it-
very watered down.
Once
Yeah.
they start, they don't stop. You can't put them out with 10,000 gallons of water. They just burn
And they're toxic.
extremely. You get into the streams and the rivers.
So that's the good news.
Most things that are green are toxic, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, our next presentation, our next presenter is Ms. Shannon Hannawald for Endometriosis Awareness Month. So we have a proclamation here as well, so,
To read it.
come on up. Yeah.
Sit down first.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome back.
Yeah,
Have a seat.
have a seat, yeah, come on up.
Well, I'm gonna give you guys the, well, you can pass these around. 3 years ago, I started an advocacy and support group for endometriosis. Endometriosis takes,
Talk with the microphone.
3 years ago, I started an endometriosis support group and advocacy group. It's called Endo Warriors of the Eastern Shore. I really had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I just wanted to make sure that nobody went through what I went through. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit of my story. My name is Shannon Pinder Hannawald, and I always make sure to put my maiden name in there because that's who and where I was when this journey started. I draw strength from it because everyone says that I'm stubborn, and I know I get that from my grandparents. They worked hard, they loved hard, and they supported hard. When I need the strength to fight this disease and advocate for others, I always come back to how strong, stubborn, and resilient they were, and it gives me the strength and courage to continue doing what needs to be done. Endometriosis is a disease that affects all aspects of your life. Emotionally, mentally, and physically, endometriosis can take everything from you, and it did to me until I decided it was time to fight back. Fight for awareness, education, and support so that generations after me do not go through what I and so many other women have. Endo is a whole body disease, and while the last 2 years I focused more on the physical side of things, such as infertility, excruciating pain, and other immune disorders that are common, I have decided to bring more awareness to how this disease affects you emotionally and mentally this year. My pain started when I was 15 years old and started out as a doctor saying I had ovarian cyst rupturing. After that, my pain just increased and the help and the knowledge from the doctors decreased. My parents took me to so many doctors. I had more CT scans and ultrasounds than I can count, all coming back with the results of nothing. How was that possible? I was in excruciating, debilitating pain that nobody could seem to help me with. My parents started to believe the doctors that I was just trying to get out of school. And honestly, when I look back on it now, they didn't really have a choice. I had severe depression and anxiety because nobody would listen or help me. I felt alone and dismissed by everyone, and I didn't know what I was going to do. The feeling of being dismissed and made out for people to think that you were lying is a feeling I would not wish on anyone. They are feelings that I long ago buried and tried not to allow back into my life, but I know in doing this mission I have to be completely honest and brutal if needed so our family, friends, coworkers, and even acquaintances can understand the feeling they share when you look perfectly healthy on the outside. When I was 17, I was at a point where I didn't want to live anymore. I was alone, tired, in pain physically and emotionally, and I was done. I was a shell of myself, going through the motions every day. Having the people who were supposed to protect and help me think I was lying about how I felt was defeating and crushing to every part of me. I decided one night I was done. I went and I got one of my prescriptions, and I took every last pill in the bottle. My mom just happened to walk in and saw what I had done. She called 911. They gave me the charcoal to get the medication out of my system. I was sent to a rehabilitation center. At the moment I decided to swallow those pills, I didn't really have any feelings. I didn't think about how what I was doing would affect anyone else. At that point, all I really thought was, I can't keep doing this. Nobody believes me. I'm scared and I'm tired of fighting. But maybe it was in my head. Maybe there really wasn't anything wrong. After that night, my perspective changed. I don't know why and I don't know how, but I decided I was going to fight. I was going to figure out what was wrong with me, and I wasn't going to let anyone else feel the way I did for the past 2 years. Nobody should want to take their own life because of how people make you feel. It took me a long time to be able to let the anger and hurt go towards my family. After 5 years, I finally found a doctor that would listen to me, and as soon as I told him my symptoms, he said, "I'm certain you have endometriosis." Endometriosis, what was that, and why had nobody even mentioned this to me or my parents? The only way to diagnose endometriosis is through laparoscopic surgery. No blood work, no ultrasounds, no MRIs, and no CT scans. We scheduled my surgery, and sure enough, I had stage 4 endometriosis. That was the first of my 14 surgeries to try and help remove the lesions to help with the pain. The next obstacle was infertility. Growing up, you don't think about not being able to have children because that's just something that women do, but that wasn't the case. Knowing something was wrong with me and could prevent me from being one of the things I wanted most in this world, and that was to be a mom. The mental impact it has on you is debilitating. I felt not normal, damaged, and discouraged. Unfortunately, there are women who lose the mental battle with themselves over this disease. Many women have committed suicide because of the impact endometriosis has not just on you physically, but mentally as well. Endometriosis takes, on average, about 10 years to receive a diagnosis. Endometriosis has taken so much for me. I've missed many important dates and celebrations with family and friends. It took away my ability to have children like other women. It took a baby from me during fertility treatments, a baby that was loved and dreamt of. It is still a continuous battle for me daily. I am not the mom or wife that I want to be all the time. The guilt of always not being a present partner for my husband or the full-time hands-on mom I want to be. The guilt I have when I have to cancel plans with my friends or play dates for my children will probably never end, but I will always remind myself that they still love and support me even when I don't. My mission is to change this. We need people to listen and understand when we are talking about how we feel. We need not to be made to feel guilty because we have to cancel plans, miss time from work, or because we spend more time at the doctor than most. The more we talk about endometriosis, the more women and their families will know they are not alone in this fight. It will hopefully give them the courage and strength to fight for themselves, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. I want the word endometriosis to be known as well as if someone says they have an ear infection or strep throat. I know some women do not want to speak publicly about a disease that is so personal, so I will speak for them. Endometriosis has no cure, only treatments. Doctors will tell you to have a hysterectomy, but that does not stop it from growing on other organs. Endometriosis has been found not just on pelvic organs, but on the lungs and brain as well. It is imperative that we all work together and support each other through this journey. My passion and drive are because I do not want anyone to go through what I have, but I have chosen to fight because you never know who is watching and learning from you. I always go to the quote, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I ask you to remember just because someone looks okay on the outside, it doesn't mean that they are okay on the inside. If someone says they have endo, please remember this point in time. Endo affects each of us differently. It is a complex disease that requires numerous specialists for each patient. There are no two stories the same. I just want to make sure that no other girl gets to the point where I was when I decided to take that bottle of pills that night, because I know people don't want to talk about feminine issues because it's uncomfortable, but if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do, because I refuse to let anybody else go through what I and so many other women have. So I want to thank you very much for supporting this and helping me bring awareness. And I know that the women in our communities are very thankful. I hear from many of them, and it says that it gives them strength, and it gives me strength. I wish that I would have known 20 years ago that I had people that would support me when I didn't think that there was anyone. So,
Well, Shannon, thank you for sharing that with us. We do have a proclamation we'd like to read onto the record. Patrick, if you don't mind.
Can I have your permission to read it?
You can read it. I mean, I can read it if you don't want to read it. It's completely up to you.
I'd be honored to.
Okay.
I do want to speak a little bit on behalf of the folks, starting from Margie to this guy. I've only been up here a few meetings, and I have to say that we talk a lot about mental health and behavioral health. I'm really shocked at how open we are about this, and that we know that there's a crisis.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that we can do anything about it, but we understand. We really do. We do talk about it. We obviously don't understand the endometriosis part of it.
Right.
But we do talk about it. Whereas March is Endometriosis Awareness Month, and endometriosis is a condition where the uterine lining grows outside of the uterus, on ovaries, fallopian tubes, and other locations throughout the abdomen and body. And endometriosis affects 176 million reproductive age women worldwide. And whereas those who have endometriosis often have a diminished quality of life due to pain caused by disease, and whereas when symptoms are not identified early enough, it can take anywhere between 3 to 11 years for a woman to be diagnosed with endometriosis, as reported by the National Institute of Health and U.S. Library of Health. And whereas there are 4 ways to spread awareness about endometriosis. 1, talk. Talk about endometriosis to open lines of communication with yourself, with your family, with your friends, and most importantly, with your healthcare provider, your physician. 2, join an event such as Endo March, a worldwide event where survivors and supporters gather to march for awareness. You know when that is?
I have no idea.
3, educate yourself for you and or your loved ones that might be experiencing the signs and symptoms of endometriosis. 4, share your story to help others, as Shannon has. Understand that you've been through, which can be a beneficial part of the healing process. Now, therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County, do hereby proclaim March as Endometriosis Awareness Month to bring awareness to this debilitating disease so that the healing process can begin. Signed, County Commissioners.
Thank you
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
very much.
Picture.
Picture. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you guys so much for your support.
Commissioners, moving on, we're just a little behind schedule here, but we have, our next presenter is here and ready to go. We have Eric Johnson. He is the Executive Director and Vice Chair, and he's going to be talking to us about the Center for the Military and Veterans Families. And I've got some business cards I'm going to pass down from Eric. Eric, come on up. His presentation is in your book under tab 6, item 3, and also up on the screen as well. So, Eric?
I'm going to have our chairperson for the Veteran Military Support Alliance kick us off.
Hi, my name is Joe Candela. I live in Prospect Bay in Graysonville, and I'm here tonight to represent Veterans and Military Support Alliance, which I hope you have 100 questions because nobody understands what that is. You touched upon a very delicate subject. There's one veteran who commits suicide in the United States every day. Talk about that. We have a plan that's been going on for about 9 months. We've had some great progress recently where we have established a place that we're going to have this center. I don't expect anyone here to know what a resource center is, but we have an expert here, Eric Johnson, the vice president of this association. He will explain it, and we hope you have 100 questions, because I did when I volunteered to head this up. So without delay, I'm going to introduce you to Eric Johnson. Some of you know him. We are blessed to have him. He has knowledge and experience for this type of program in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and we hope to bring it here to the Eastern Shore. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you, commissioners, for your time this evening. When I was in the Air Force, I had a favorite commander of mine, George Small, Colonel Small. I will never forget, he pulled me aside and he said, if I can give you one piece of advice, son, I want you to remember the 5 Bs. And I said, the 5 Bs, sir? And he said, be brief, brother, be brief. So I understand you're behind schedule, so we're going to talk fast. I think it helps to set the stage and why we're here tonight with a quote from George Washington, our first president and our first military commander-in-chief, and he was so progressive thinking. So really listen to this. The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of early wars were treated and appreciated by their nation. And I don't think you can say it any better than that. If we didn't have a couple more things to say, I would say thank you. Any questions? But that is why we're here. I have a son who said to me at one point, Dad, when I've watched you fight for some of the health care that you need post-military service, it really makes me wonder whether I would be willing to go through that sacrifice. So within my own family, that quote is absolutely relevant. So we're here tonight because we are operationalizing, thank you for your service here in Queen Anne's County. We're going to cover those items, but the 4 or 5 quick things that I want to just have you be thinking about as I go through these slides. We're here tonight to talk about VAMSA military, very, very big on acronyms. So the Veteran and Military Support Alliance is...
I can interrupt you real quick.
Yes, sir.
Take all the time you need. Do not rush through this.
Okay.
All right?
Okay? Thank you.
Most important thing is get the message across. So don't feel rushed.
Well, I appreciate that. We will strive. I'm not known for brevity, so I think it's in everybody's best interest.
Please, take
but I
your
appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Dumino. So we mentioned.
Your slides are popping.
Oops. I apologize for that.
That was really brief.
You said brief, but that's a little,
So we talked about the acronym. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the launch of a capital campaign that'll be official on April 22nd coming up. We do have a budget request in front of you for external agency requests that I understand you guys are going to be looking at on Thursday. So any help you can give us toward that end, we're going to be thanking you in advance for that. We are launching as of this week, relaunching I should say, a needs assessment that we put together in SurveyMonkey that we're asking any of you that are veterans, folks at home, military, their families, and caregivers to take the survey. It takes less than 3 minutes, and we're going to be releasing that on social media. And we will be using that survey data to really drive our programming. And I did it again, didn't I?
I just thought it was a slideshow, I could just change that.
I promise I'm not hitting the buttons. I don't know if.
You want me to hold that?
Thank you.
He's good at it. Just say next slide.
I'm not hitting, I don't know why it's auto.
Bruce, what are you doing over there?
So, I apologize, I'm not sure why it's auto advancing. I'm gonna assume. So, I'm just gonna speak. So, the launch and purpose, on September 9th of 2021, a small group of concerned citizens came together. Jim Moran was part of that group, some of our Legion commanders and officers. And then it was in January of this past year that we had an organizing session. And one of the interesting things that I think is worth stressing is the idea that in Queen Anne's County, veterans choose and military choose to live here, to raise their families here, and to die here. And that says something. So when you look at the statistics from census, it's about 7+% of the country is veterans. In Maryland, it's 8.2%, and in Queen Anne's County, as of 2010, it's 9.8%. It has gone down in the recent census. But if you take a multiplier of 2.5 family members for each veteran, now you're talking about a third of this community is either a veteran or a veteran family member. And so that's a sizable population that we're talking about here. In February of 2022, we talked specifically about tiny homes for veterans and other housing options. And as we talked to Vivian Swinson about zoning around that, and we looked at statistics, from the Department of Community Services Housing, and we realized that we're very fortunate that we don't have a homeless problem for veterans. We had a strategic pause. We relaunched the group in October of last year, and at that time, we were able to focus on establishing a resource center, as Joe indicated, for veterans and military and their families. With respect to our business plan, and I want to introduce Maggie Thomas. Many of you know her already from her previous work. She is one of our consultants and is going to be helping me operationally. So I serve currently as a director. She is a co-director. Phase one is going to be a locally facing resource center. This is how we started out, and that is to do things like assisting with access to use of government and private sector agencies. That's one of the biggest complaints that veterans have, is they have no idea where to go for different things. The complex world that is the VA, where they do a certain percentage of their care purchased in the private sector, and so, oh my gosh, I need a prescription. Am I supposed to go back to the VA? Do I get it from my private sector provider? And I just want to stress, my background when I was in the military was I was a TRICARE officer for military health care, and then a hospital administrator, emergency manager, and then I did that in the private sector and partnered with the VA. So arguably, if you were to look at the entire population of veterans, I was in that top 0.01% of folks that knew what to do to get care. I still struggled to get care. So if you want to know why I'm sitting up here right now, it is for that very reason. And as some of you know, and I just have to share this, back to Joe's point about statistics, I have lost two of my siblings, two brothers that were Air Force officers, to suicide. So it's a very real issue for me and my family, and one of the motivators. Continuing on with our locally facing resource center, in addition to navigation, we want to do education and training, access to medical and behavioral health care, peer support, financial counseling, holistic therapies, including free massage therapy, free gym memberships, and other things that we're going to talk about at our interim site that we have on the horizon. Entrepreneurship. There's an organization, 100 entrepreneurs, the CEO of which lives in Symphony Village. Bob is a dear friend, and he started that organization with the intent to help 100 veterans become entrepreneurs, and now they're over 1,000. And some of these folks have become millionaires, as I understand. And then finally, resource networks for family members and caregivers. If you were to ask us, well, what makes us unique? Because people talk about veteran issues. Jim Moran, famously, when I first met him, when I first moved back to the area, I grew up here in Centerville, he said, you know, Eric, I will support anything that veterans want to do, but people come up to me constantly with ideas, and I say, give me a plan. So we have a plan. What we didn't expect is the attraction of some national organizations, the VA, Department of Agriculture, some other connections I made when I was in Allentown building a similar center that was a hospital-based model. This would be a rural community-based, something different that I have not done, but we're going to take a stab at it. And getting the attention of some of our national partners, we have been told that we have cracked the code on what rural communities should be doing for their veterans. And as a result, we have been invited to partner with some national organizations, to include the National Veteran Health and Wellness Foundation, to operationalize what will be the National Center for the Military and Veteran Family that will be on Kent Island. And so on April 22nd, which I'll come right back to, we will not only be announcing that, but the capital campaign for that. The part of the National Center that's worth mentioning tonight is a nationally facing resource center where rural community leaders across the nation will be invited to travel to Maryland and come to Kent Island, of all places. Can't think of a better place, right, for this. Stay here, enjoy the weather, not have to be in the city environment that we all love on the other side, but we're grateful it's there, right? So at any rate, they'll come here, they'll take a several-day course, and the last module for their training and how to operationalize thank you for your service in their communities will be looking at our resource center as a learning lab. That is the long pole in the tent. So our first up is to, over the next year, build out the locally facing resource center, and then thereafter the national center. We do have a model. It is up conveniently, but I know it's going to keep going, so I got lucky there that that's up. You see on one side, I don't expect you to read this eye chart, but VAMS's priorities are on the left, the National Veteran Health and Wellness Foundation are on the right. Our priorities pair up along the lines of education, pathways, support, and advocacy. So they were the perfect match. We are about to engage in some visioning sessions with them to really plan out what does the perfect supported veteran, his or her family member, military, and most important as well, caregivers, what does that look like, and how do we work backward to establish a support structure here in Queen Anne's County for that? And then conversely, what does a community that is doing exactly what it needs to do for veterans look like, and then build backwards from there for the nationally facing resource center. On April 22nd, as I mentioned, we have a very special Vietnam memorial dedication and launch. This will be at Libby's Restaurant on Kent Island, and while it's not a public event, we do have Attorney General Anthony Brown attending and speaking. Commissioner Jim Moran is also speaking on the platform. We wanted to make you aware of the event. It is likely going to be on national news media, especially with the announcement of the National Center. And following the 10 a.m. dedication, and I think it's worth mentioning as we talk to our partners, Walt Petrie, the owner-operator of Libby's Restaurant, he and his counterpart, Wes Guckert, two Vietnam War veterans, survivors, are dedicating this monument to their unit, their fallen, their surviving members. We all understand that Vietnam War veterans did not receive the most welcome home that I received when I came home from Afghanistan. And so we know that Kent Island is the welcome to the Eastern Shore. So we're going to have a statue there that says, welcome home Vietnam veterans, and welcome to the Eastern Shore, all veterans, all military. This will be a destination center. At 11 a.m. after the dedication, we will have a luncheon where we will launch our capital campaign. Our goal is to raise $375,000 for our fiscal year 24. We have adopted a similar fiscal year to the county, July 1 through June 30th. Finally, our next steps. We have been given office space at no charge, thanks to the folks at Bay Bridge Marina for 6 to 8 months, and then we will be moving within the campus to another location about 6 to 8 months from now. We're going to continue to assess the needs of our veterans, our military, our families, and their caregivers through the Survey Monkey that I mentioned, and we are so grateful that Beth Mulaski, your public affairs officer, has graciously offered to help us push that out once we get the link set up on social media, so we want to thank her for that. And again, thank you all for your support. We're going to conduct our visioning sessions here in the next 2 weeks to look at phase 1 and 2, what that looks like. We're going to host some local fundraising events in support of the capital campaign. In the meantime, we have already launched support groups. Shout out to Fred McNeil, who has been very active here in Centerville with veterans. There is a veteran support group that meets and they read books that veterans have written that have been traumatized, and we meet monthly and discuss the book, talk about our trauma, talk about suicidality and things like that. And then there's a more social group that started at Dunkin' Donuts here in Centerville at 11 a.m. on Mondays. Any vets are welcome to join us. We're going to do a similar footprint on Kent Island. Eventually we'll offer trauma-informed care-based support groups. Veterans will ultimately come into the center that we've just started to build and fit out to receive all the things I mentioned in phase 1, the navigation, the financial counseling, free massage therapy, you name it. We're not there yet, so the big message tonight is we're building, and we promise to come back when we're ready for a ribbon cutting, but we're not there yet. So we're not quite ready for referrals, but the least we can do now is start with our support groups. And finally, we're going to continue to partner with organizations like Compass here in Centerville. I only mention them because they have a very specific program that they've started for veterans, and long-term care is a part of our model. And I'll end on that point. What makes us unique is the idea that we want to take care of the whole family. So that's veterans, which the VA can only take care of veterans that are rated, right? So we're taking care of anybody, military, spouses, children, grandchildren, and caregivers. And then the second thing that makes us unique that I think is worth mentioning is, help me out.
Cradle to grave.
Cradle to grave, thank you. Once in a while I need an assist. Cradle to grave. So as you all know, we have organizations like ROTC here in this county. We have the Kent Island Sea Cadets. So what organization out there is saying, you know what, let's start with people that have already said, I think I want to be in the military, and let's start taking care of them. Let's make sure their mental health is good. Let's make sure they understand what resources are available before they're ever in harm's way. So when they come home, they're not searching for those resources. They already know where they are. So that's our objective. We're so grateful for the opportunity to talk to you about it, and just look for your support ongoing, and we'll come back when we're ready to talk about a ribbon cutting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any questions?
You've come a long way.
Well done.
You've come
Thank
a
you.
long way.
I apologize for the slides. I'm not sure what that was about.
I still think it's Bruce over there.
You know what? If we can blame QACTV, I'm grateful. Definitely not them. Well, thank you, gentlemen, if there's no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks, sir. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Eric, when the last administration changed the TRICARE and allowed vets to go outside of the VA, did that improve healthcare, do you think?
It absolutely improved healthcare. What I'll tell you, and as most veterans would say, it is more of an appearance of veteran choice than an actual veteran choice. The VA is still the gatekeeper when it comes down to it. But President Trump did open the door for that, and I think the current administration is continuing to push that door open. So we're getting there.
Especially if they're not close to a VA.
Yes.
They can take their benefits and go local.
I drive 2 hours for some of my appointments, and I think that's criminal, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you all. All right, Commissioners, moving along, we have, next up, we have our Director of Budget and Finance, Ms. Nicole Hepfer, and the Spending Affordability Committee update, and we have several members of the Spending Affordability Committee here this evening.
right?
All the members? I think we're missing one. We have one.
Oh, missing one.
Yeah, we are. So Nicole's going to come up along with Karen, and if you folks want to join up in the front row or up here in the front, that's great. We have Joe Zimmerman, Steve Wilson, Linda Kohler, and the newest member of the committee, Gary Mangum. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Greetings.
Thank you.
So this is also in your book, tab 6, item 4, and we have a slideshow here. Hopefully it's going to
No pressure.
I gave it
go
to
through
Karen, so.
each slides smoothly. Yeah. All right, Nicole?
Good evening, Commissioners. We'll start, we have 2 presentations. We'll start with the spending affordability first. Just a report summary, again, we have our committee members. 4 of them are here this evening. Mr. Joe Zimmerman, Mr. Bernie Sadusky is not here, Ms. Linda Kohler is here, Mr. Steve Wilson, and our newest member, Mr. Gary Magnum. We started the FY24 budget consideration back in the fall. We had a meeting with all of the members. We started with a discussion on the economy, the budget and revenue comparison, the fund balance amounts, the expenditure and revenue forecast, and their performance relative to our various debt policies. For the FY24 budget guidelines, the revenue, its overall estimated budget growth for FY24 compared to FY23 at about 7.1%, or $12.2 million. That's based on our current revenue projections. The property tax growth was projected at an increase of 5.6%. The homestead credit will remain at 5%. And the FY24 income tax is estimated to grow at about 13% above the FY22 actual level.
Nicole, do Do you have anything built in for the $400 million write-down by the state, or? is
We
that not
did, we have a slide in the middle of this with the revenue, but we did decrease our revenue for income tax based on that.
Okay.
And then the next slide, we go into expenditures. The potential or known expenditure increases in '24 include estimated increase of approximately 7% for supplies, materials, contracted services, and other costs based on current budget requests. So we took the requests that came in from all the departments for those categories and compared the increase over last year. Estimated increase of 5% in the healthcare cost. In maintenance of effort in prior years was dependent on enrollment change and actions of the General Assembly, and the maximum growth from the state was 2.5%. However, in recent years, the calculation has been adjusted for other factors such as declining enrollment and recent legislation. And even as of now, we don't have the maintenance of effort certificate, and we've checked with the Board of Ed, and the state is waiting to send it out pending the legislation. So we don't even have a preliminary certificate to go from. The initial request from the Board of Ed was $4.8 million increase over FY23 funding, which was 7.5%. Okay. And as part of the budget process, we will discuss and determine the county employee's salary and benefit costs for COLA, pay for performance, desk audits, and any other salary adjustments. For OPEB, we'll continue to contribute to that based on our actuarial plan and the 10-year plan, and we are currently funded at 25% of the total OPEB liability. Fringe benefits and retirement rates are from the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, and health benefits through ESMIC with the benefits consultant. In the last two bullets, we talk about the rainy day fund, which we will retain funding at least 8% of budgeted revenues. And the revenue stabilization fund will continue funding not to exceed $1 million in any given year, or 5% of budgeted general fund operating revenues. Okay. And then we talk about the capital plan. The May 2023 planned bond sale of $7 million has been postponed either to the fall or to be combined with the '24 bond sale. We only had a few projects that were planned for that bond sale, and they hadn't incurred expenditures yet. So we held off on the bond sale, and that way we weren't incurring debt for projects and funding that wasn't needed. And the projected bond sale for FY24 will be approximately $10 million, a little bit less, and that will be in addition to the $7 million if we combine the two together. We will use a limited amount of PAYGO funding as a transfer from the general fund to the capital budget to minimize any debt going forward. And we've done that in the last few years, and when we get to the budget for FY24, we can go over that, but we've also planned that for this year as well. And we will utilize the county debt policy in considering affordability of any new capital projects, limiting debt service to less than 10% of the budget, and use capital fund balance to support the capital program and reduce the amount of debt as well. So then we're showing the total outstanding debt. Estimated for June 2023, a decrease of $9.1 million from $130.9 million in 2022 down to $121.8. The decrease is mainly the result of not issuing the $7 million bond and also paying off the debt that was due this year. And then the notes decreased by $47,000 from $655 to $608 for this year. So the total decrease was 7% for our governmental bonds and notes payable. The next slide is where we're showing the projected bond sales. So we're looking at the top of the chart, we have our governmental activities and business type. So in 2023, it's estimated to end at 121.8 for government and $2 million for business type. And then we project that out through FY '29, showing we have the 7 million bond and just estimates of 10 million for each year going forward, to come up with a projected debt amount, bond debt amount for FY '29 at 125 million.
Nicole, do we have a breakout what of the outstanding bond debt right now is school?
We do. I don't have that with me, but we do keep track of that, and we have to report that every year.
I'm just curious what it is, what percentage it is of the total.
I can get that information to you.
If you got it Thursday, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. Okay, and then the next two slides go over the debt measures. The first, on slide 9, is debt as a percentage of assessable base. The limit is 2.5% for 2023. We're showing 1.33%, and in 2029, showing 1.15%. And then the next slide, we have debt per capita. The maximum is $3,000 for all the years. We're in compliance. We're at $2,363 for FY23 and $2,314 for 2029. And then debt as a percentage of general fund expenditures, the measure has a limit of 10%, and the current measure is 7.3, and down to 6.24 in 2029. Okay, and this is where we get into the revenue forecast. So this chart was showing the FY21 actual, FY22 estimated, which should be the actuals. We just haven't finalized that information yet. And the adopted budget for FY23, and then the projected FY23 and FY24 revenue budget. So we're going from the adopted budget in FY23 of 171.4 to projected for FY23 at 180.4 million, and then 183.6 for FY24. So as you go through, it's a couple things to point out. The property tax increase, the income tax increased, and for FY23, the projected amount, we've looked at all of the distributions so far, and then the ones that will come between now and the end of the year, we're just really estimating very little growth on those. So that's how we arrived at the 78 million for FY23, and then just 3% growth for income tax above that. So that's where we decreased based on the state's decision. The recordation and transfer tax, we're showing in 23 approximately a 20% decrease from 22, and that's just based on what we've seen so far this year. So we've projected that out, and then we're showing from those amounts a 5% decrease in 24, just because we're not really sure when that's going to flatten out. Also, highway user revenue, you'll notice that that is zeroed out for 23 and 24, and that's because we were required to separate the roads department from the general fund. So that's why you see that decrease there. And then investment income in 22 is 325,000. We budgeted 175. We're projecting 2.2 million. The rates this time last year were 0.05%, and in February of 2023 it was 4.52%. And we did decrease the projection in 24 just because we're just going to continue to watch it and see how it goes, but we're projecting 1.7 million. And then the transfers in is from the school impact fees, and that's based on the schedule that we've come up with. So some of the FY24 issues, the Board of Education funding, as we mentioned, the maintenance of effort certificate, we don't even have a preliminary certificate for that. Declining enrollment and the formulas, and we're not really sure what to expect. Also, we still have the ARPA funds. We used 25% in 22. We are planning to use more ARPA funds for FY23, but we have total, outside of what we used last year, we have 7.3 million available. And also our capital project funding, we have increased cost. We have several large county and Board of Ed projects that we're funding. The county workforce is an issue, still with staff recruitment, retention, and succession initiatives. And along with that, the employee pay increases for COLA and pay for performance. And we just included a little chart just to show over the last 3 years, the CPI for 2022 is 9.1%. And then the next slide we have included in the recommendations are some finance office policy updates. The debt policy, we've been meaning to look at that and review the debt measures and either modify the measures that we have or add to them. So that's an update that we have on the list. The procurement policy, to consider adding language for the county administrator approval for small to medium vehicle purchases when they're already approved in the budget, either with a budget amendment or in the adopted budget. And the reason for this is just because of the market. The vehicles are often sold by the time the departments come and seek approval.
I recommend, though, that if you would put that language in there, that we put it in to be reviewed every year, so that as the markets change, that it will revert back to the way the program runs now.
Okay. Okay, and the next is the budget amendment policy. So currently, any budget amendment 10,000 or less can be approved by the county administrator. Anything higher than that would have to come to the county commissioners unless you've already approved it during one of the meetings. So the proposed change is to make any zero-sum amendments within the same fund and department to be approved by the Director of Budget and Finance. So this is just where a department is moving it between the expense categories. Usually it's based on the grant requirements. And then any amendments of 10,000 or less could also be approved by the Director of Budget and Finance, and the county administrator could approve anything between 10 and 25,000. And also to review and update the tax differential process and update the cash management policy and create an investment management policy. So these are all policies over the next several months that we're hoping that the finance office will be able to work on and bring to you for your approval. And then the next page, the committee recommendations, and a lot of these are the same or similar to prior year. The first one is just still that it's a volatile period, and the outcomes can be unpredictable. Based on just an example, the state of Maryland recently lowered the state revenue projections for FY23 and FY24. And the federal government has stated rates will go up further, and we've also seen regional bank failures. So we just have to be careful and conservative with our revenue projections, which I feel that we have done that in the forecast. Also, another recommendation is that it would be advisable to formulate a 5-year operating budget projection similar to like we do with the capital plan. And that is something that we're hoping that we can work on through our budget software to at least start that in the next few months and have that available for next year. And also the long-term impacts of Kerwin Commission and the Board of Ed funding going forward. And then the last one is to observe the agreed-upon procedures in considering future capital budgets and bond sales. And that the county should focus on the out years of the capital budget and not just the current budget year. And then slide 15, that the county should take advantage of the strong financial condition using fund balance and pay-go and reducing their reliance on debt. And also possibly to pursue bond funding every other year rather than annually, especially if there are smaller bonds like we had with the $7 million bond. And that we should continue to fund infrastructure and scheduled replacements. And consideration should be given to the county's future development plans and population growth and impacts on capital construction, particularly for the Board of Education projects. And the county should rely on the strong financial condition, long-term planning, and sound financial management to avoid tax rate increases. And then the last page, a few more recommendations. The budget growth, again, is, we're showing approximately 7.1%, so strong revenue growth. And we have noted that the last few years, the experience of higher than anticipated growth in income tax is explained by multiple factors such as increase in personal income tax collections, capital gain income, and wage gains evident in the past 3 years. And here we have the ARPA, just a summary of the ARPA funds. We received total of $9.8 million between 22 and 23. We can use all of the funds for general government services or the other categories, the COVID-19 public health, premium pay, investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. We've used 25% in 22, and we still have the 7.3 remaining. And the last recommendation is that there is some indication that the higher revenue levels will not be sustained in the near future, and the county should remain cautious with spending and budget growth.
Done.
Any questions?
Questions or
I think
comments?
we'll have plenty of those coming.
Push-ups. Does anybody on the board want to come up and say anything?
Got any questions?
No?
You got
There
your-
you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, if you got your crystal ball on what the MOE would be, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Get to hear from the scruffy old guy once a year. Great. I would stress the need for 5-year planning, good, solid 5-year planning. I don't know how you got away from that, but that was in place 20 years ago. And especially base it on a real capital plan. Not what people think you'd like to do, but what's out there that needs to be done. One of the things, you're talking about a new Board of Ed building. That's great, but what do you do with the monster over on Chesterfield Avenue? That's going to be a money pit forever. Somebody needs to do a realistic infrastructure assessment of all the schools. There were a lot of schools done in the 90s and the early 2000s that are now 20, 25 years old, 25 years past renovation. So you got a lot of old roofs out there. Got a lot of old infrastructure out there. You need a realistic plan because that's going to drive your debt, it's going to drive your spending. That's my one thing I keep carpeting Nicole about. You got to do that. And frankly, I think your next biggest challenge in the short term is going to be compensation levels to attract and keep talented people. It's hard to find people these days, much harder than it was years ago. And I don't know why that is, but public service just isn't attractive to people as it used to be, apparently. So. Actually, I'm a mere slip of a youth compared to my counterpart at the other end of this row. So.
When you have an economy, one of the things that always drew people into public service was the sort of guarantee that in tough times you wouldn't get sacked. I mean, that was a kind of staple of the game. And when you have an economy with a 3.8% unemployment rate and anybody could get a job at any point, the value of a security of a job suddenly deteriorates down to a very low number. So that becomes a question. I think a fact that this commission is aware of and we should be watching is that this is the first year that we've had in which income was a bigger proportion of our revenue than it used to be. A third. It used to be 20%, then it was 40. Well, this year it crossed, and we're now more heavy on the income side by $1 million or so than we were. That's probably going to continue, but it's a more volatile part of the equation and probably susceptible in a recession. I used to think maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 million in a year. So that susceptibility is now enhanced, and it makes more sense to keep funding up the Revenue Sustainability Fund because that's the heat shield if you need it. I mean, what you don't want to ever have to do is do what we did before, which is fire the workers and cut back the services. This government should be able to run maintaining its services, maintaining the workers, and without a tax increase. So those are sort of fundamental principles of the game. So
Very well. Anybody?
Anything else, folks?
You've got it.
So thank you very much for the effort and time that you guys put in for this. I don't think there's anything that any of us up here could say to convince you just how amazing that your efforts and the work that you put in to kind of give us a forecast as we get ready to launch into our budget process. So please try to accept this, this appreciation for all your efforts and your commitment to do this.
Here, here.
Yeah,
Still wish you had a crystal ball, but I guess we're not going to get that, huh?
I have one, it just. it's
I tell you what,
cloudy.
with the work that you folks done, that's pretty close. Maybe it's not a crystal ball, maybe just a little cloudy, but we're certainly in a much better place than we were before.
Oh, my, yes. Where you were in 2011 was just downright
You and I
scary.
served on that task force together, along with Mr. Moran.
Some things you don't forget.
No, nope, they sit right back here. Never want to be there again.
No, no, you don't.
for this next year to pass without any flutters in the economy would be a surprise to me.
A lot of people.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. All right, well, that tees us up very nicely for the presentation of the proposed county administrator's FY24 budget. And Nicole and Karen have the double feature tonight, so they can continue. So this is also in your book. The next item, page 38, item number 5, tab 6, also up on the screen.
Okay, some of this may be repetitive. So Karen and I have the county administrator's budget presentation that we'll go over. We have some operating budget information in the beginning, and then we'll go into the capital budget. Do you want to do this? Okay. So we'll start out with just going over some FY 2023 general fund update information again, which we've talked about some of this in the last spending affordability presentation. The 2023 revenue projections indicate estimated revenue at 5.3% over the adopted budget. The adopted budget was $171.4 million, and we're projecting $180.5. The largest increase is in the income tax revenue, which is estimated at 13.3% above the budgeted revenue. We budgeted $68.8 million, and we're projecting close to $78 million. The recordation and transfer tax, the projections are estimated at 20% lower than the budget amounts. Total for both of those categories, budgeted was 13.4, and we're projecting 10.8. Another huge increase was in the investment income, which is estimated at $2.2 million compared to the $325,000 that was budgeted. And in the 2023 general fund budget, we included PAYGO funding of $5.3 million for the capital projects. Then we get into the 2024 budget highlights. The budgeted growth is 7.1% from 171.4 to 183.6 million for FY 2024. The income and property tax make up 87.2% of the total revenue sources. Compared to FY 22, the income tax revenue is projected to grow at 16.7%. Property tax revenue is projected to grow at 5.6%. All of these projections are assuming no change in the property tax rate, which is 0.83, and the income tax is 3.2%. Some of the 2024 budget highlights, the Board of Education included in the county administrator's budget that we'll go over. We've funded at $1.9 million above the FY23 amount, which is 3%, a 3% increase. And again, we're still waiting on the maintenance of effort certificates. And we did include funding for employee recruitment and retention actions.
While you're there, Nicole, I hate to stop you on this. So to put this in clarity to a lot of people, because they're going to see that we're 3% and all that, but you said it earlier, and I think it heeds saying it again, is that is preliminary based on legislation is down there that could push this number via mandate a lot higher. And I think even in your other presentation, you said 4.8 million, but I think some of that has even already been mandated, if I'm not mistaken. So that number could go up, regardless of student population. That's what
Right.
people got to understand. Student
Right.
population is no longer something that is looked at since COVID. It's, we're operating, basically, the year 2020 didn't exist in terms of student population, so we're operating on 2019 numbers, more or less. So people got to keep that in mind. Even though our population is down in the student world, we're still operating like they're still there.
And that's what we saw last year as well.
Exactly. So, but some people may not understand that when they see the numbers and when they see it vetted in the Board of Ed, how they're going to be presented, and Thursday night they'll get to see us both sit here together and go over it, but just to keep that in mind, that there's, I don't want to say it's shell game, but there's some fancy calculating going on that's not necessarily exactly the way Kerwin was designed, so.
And even if you have a student population, that doesn't mean that the expenditures for the school system are different. If you have a 10% reduction in student population, you're not doing 10% lights, 10% salary.
Right, because, right.
You know.
And you still have one teacher in the room, whether there's 10 students or 20
It's
students.
exactly
and
the
you're still
same.
paying one teacher for that room. So it's, there's really some operational costs that, again.
A lot of those fixed costs don't go
Right,
low.
and I've read on that with Kerwin, you really need to look at how much does it cost to open the school? How much does it cost to educate our kids, not how much is it per student, and let's just pay that, because every student's different and the needs are different. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, that's for another day.
Okay. I think we're at employee compensation increase. The budget includes 3% cost of living adjustment and additional pay for performance. Also, it includes funding for 16 new full-time and 3 part-time positions and variety of departments. We have emergency services, detention center, public works, parks, roads, aging, animal services, information technology, planning and zoning, and sanitary. The PAYGO funding and the FY24 budget is $8.0 million, which helps reduce the debt issuance planned for next year. Budget also includes LoSAP program funding and allocation increases for the volunteer fire departments, and also funding towards the Economic Development Incentive Program. Also includes county internship opportunities via human resources for various departments, and also library enhancement funding. Then on slide 5, we have the county administrator's FY 2024 general fund budget, which again, the 23 adopted budget was 171.4, and the 24 budget is 183.6. It's a $12.2 million increase at 7.1%. Increase, the majority of the increase is in income taxes at 11.5 million. The interest income also increased by 1.5 million. We're showing a decrease in recordation and transfer tax, and again, the state share tax for highway user has been removed from the general fund. And then the next few slides, we go over the expenditure budget, which is organized by departments. First, we start with county administration, a total of $9.3 million, which is a 10% increase. And any enhancements, we'll go over the enhancements after this, but they are included if they were funded in these figures. Community services, almost $4 million, which is a $750,000 increase. Planning and zoning at $2.6 million, which is a 7% increase. And then last on this page, we have public safety at $20.8 million, which is 10% increase. And on the next page, we have public works, which is really showing a decrease, but that's because of the roads department. So in 23, the approved budget for roads was $5.9 million. That was not net of the highway user revenue. So the revenue showed as revenue, the expenses showed here. So the $4.6 million that we see under roads is really the transfer out that will bring the roads fund whole. So that's why you see a decrease there. So I just wanted to explain that. If we didn't include that for the roads transfer out, then the net change for public works would really be 10.8%. Parks and Recs, total of $6.4 million, which is 6% increase. So total of all the general county government was a $3.6 million increase to $56.5 million, which is approximately 7%. The next page, we have the Board of Education and the other agencies. This is the Board of Education where we added the 1.9 to the FY23 base budget to come up to $66 million, and that's the 3% increase. And then the total of all the other agencies is $2.3 million increase to $29 million, and that's 8.5%. And then the last for the expenditure budget, we're showing the debt, which the debt service decreased from $13.2 million to $12.7, which was about $400,000 at 3.2%. And then in the other category, increased from $14.1 million to $18.8. The majority of that increase is in the transfer out because we had 5.3 budgeted last year. We increased the pay-go to $8 million for this year to fund some of the larger capital projects. And then the next two slides, we show the revenue and expenditure, the revenue by source on slide 10, and you'll see again the property and income tax make up the majority of the revenue, total combined at 88%. And then the expenses on slide 11 by function, the total proposed budget $183.6 million, education is at 36%, then we have public safety at 11%, outside agencies at 16%, and then some of the other categories. And then we're showing the tax rates by county, and you can see that Queen Anne's County is the third lowest tax rate in the state at 0.83. And then the next slide, we go over the change from last year's budget to this year's proposed budget. Both revenue and expenditures changed by $12.2 million. On the revenue side, the income and property tax make up the majority of the increase. At $4.4 million for property tax and $11.5 for income tax. The expenditures, the majority of the increase came from public safety at $2 million, Board of Education at almost $2 million, and the transfers, the pay-go at $3 million. And then we go over the enhancements, the next, I think, 4 or 5 slides. So the total enhancements were requested were $9.5 million. Of that, $6.1 million have been funded and included in the county administrator's budget. And we will provide more details of those during the budget work sessions. But we go through on slide 14, we're showing the aging department had a few enhancements, mainly for staffing at the senior center at the YMCA. We have a medical care technician at Animal Services. Then we're showing the Board of Education. The allocation increase requested was $4.8 million. And then there were 2 non-recurring costs, the second phase of the Queen Anne's County High School paving and also replacement of playground equipment at Sudlersville Elementary School. Those have both been funded but included in our capital budget, both the $550,000 and the $350,000 for the playground equipment. Chesapeake College requested a 4% increase, which was included in our capital budget. And then the last request we have was from Community Affairs. And then on page 15, we have several positions and also grant writing services from emergency services and the admin, special operations, and fire marshal divisions. And several have been funded. And then DPW, we have engineering, general services, and roads, 3 positions, which are all included in the county administrator's budget. In detention center, we have 3 positions funded as well. Economic development, we have included in the funding was $26,000 for rent or overhead at the Satellite Visitor Center while they're doing renovation. Also, the economic development incentive funding, 297,000 that we've included. And salary increases for the extension services have been included, and 5% increase for the volunteer fire departments, along with the increase related to the LoSAP change. So that's all included in the county administrator's budget. And the internship program was funded, and a cybersecurity coordinator for IT as well.
Are both of those half-year funding? Is that what?
I know the IT position was, and the internship was just funded at half the level, because it was for a variety of positions for multiple departments. And the library submitted enhancement requests for $281,000. Some of those were funded. We also received a priority list as well that we'll review during the budget work sessions. Parks Department had a few positions and then also pay machines. So the pay machines were funded and one of the positions. And planning and zoning and sanitary both had positions which were funded. Sanitaries is funded through the sanitary fund, so that's not general fund for that position. In the last page of the enhancements, we have soil conservation. One is just a position change, and the other one is for additional staff at the conservation specialist. Both were funded. And then we have funds in contingency. This is similar to what we did last year. We put in contingency for now, and then we can use those funds to either fund other enhancements or change pay-go. It's just going to be available for discussion during the budget work sessions. So again, there was 24 positions requested, 19 were funded. So a total of $6.1 million funded for the enhancements. And then we get into the rest of our slides are on the capital budget, which Karen is going to go over.
So for the FY24 capital budget, we funded it at $52.7 million, which is comprised of $34.9 million in general capital, $6.6 million in the roads fund, and $11.2 million in the enterprise funds. Some of the highlights are the detention center renovation and expansion. That is $12.5 million in FY24. $11.5 million of that is funded with grants, and $1 million is funded with bonds. In the roads capital projects, we have $6.6 million, which is funding for the roadway paving, parking lot overlays, and bridge maintenance. The Board of Education is funded at $6.4 million, which includes funding for the new central office, the Kent Island High School roof replacement, the current central office building, fire alarm replacement, playground replacement, and parking lot resurfacing at Queen Anne's County High School. Parks was funded at $3.2 million, which includes funding for the South Island Trail development, court work, capital equipment, landscaping, and public sewer extension to White Marsh Park. Emergency services was funded at $2 million, which includes funding for ambulance, the Route 50 301 tower, radio subscriber replacement, and other projects. And then IT is $1.9 million, which is funding for IT infrastructure, public fiber, ERP projects, and cellular signal expansion.
I hate to say it, but that detention center number might be too low. Keep going.
Some other capital highlights are the senior center at the YMCA is funded at $1 million, which includes support for the double gym expansion and the elevated perimeter walking track. The historic courthouse has funding of $1 million. The volunteer fire companies are funded at $835,000, which is funding for purchase assistance of the apparatus and facility construction. The ski sewer system phases 2, 3, and 4 are $5.4 million, which includes the Tower Gardens, the Queen Anne, Colony, Kentmore, and Bats Neck. The residential water meter replacement is $3.5 million, which is funding for systematic replacement with smart meters. And the Chester West water main is $1 million, which is funded with ARPA grants. This is for the public water line extension from Castle Marina Road to the Stevensville Shopping Center. And public landings is $500,000, which is funding for the Thompson Creek bulkhead and fishing pier improvements at Mattapeak and Roman Coke. So now we get into the 6-year capital budget, which is FY24 through FY29. The adopted budget includes FY24, and the out years are just for planning purposes. So the total for the outside agencies and other departments is $1.9 million in FY24, a total of $8.3 million for all 6 years. And just to highlight, the allocation to the volunteer fire departments is $835,000 each year. The total for administration and general services is $4.6 million in FY24 and $22.4 million across the board. Just to point out, as we did in the capital budget highlights, that includes $1 million in FY24 for the historic courthouse and $1 million in FY24 for the senior center at the YMCA. The total in FY24 for property management is $475,000, and the total for 6 years is $1.9 million. The total animal services in FY24 is $290,000, and the total for the 6 years is $7.8 million, which includes the construction of a new animal services building in the out years, the majority in FY29. The total for Department of Emergency Services is $1.6 million in FY24 and $11.6 million in the total for the 6 years. And just as we mentioned in the capital budget highlights, that includes $535,000 for a new ambulance and $500,000 for the Route 50 301 tower. And then the detention center renovation, we have budgeted $12.5 million in FY24 and a total of $34 million across the 6 years. Total for planning and zoning is $400,000 for FY24 and $950,000 for the total 6 years. The total for IT for FY24 is $1.9 million, and then across the board for 6 years is $9.7 million. And we just wanted to highlight that in FY24 there is funding for cellular signal improvement, both at the various school locations and across the county. I know that was kind of a hot topic, so that is funded in FY24, and I think in a couple of out years too, just to kind of spread it out over a 3-year period. Solid waste is funded at $590,000 for FY24 and $2.4 million over 6 years. And then the public library system is funded at $80,000 in FY24 and $3.7 million over 6 years, and that includes the renovation of the Crumpton School Building as a library in FY26. For recreation, there isn't anything funded in FY24, but in FY25 and 26, there's $10.1 million for the construction of a new recreation center. The total for aging is $940,000 in FY24 and $3.3 million over 6 years. And in that, there is $450,000 in FY24 for the Kent Island Senior Center. The total for the Board of Education for FY24 is $6.4 million, and over 6 years is $51.5 million. As you'll see, there's no information in FY28 and 29. We just had a meeting with them a couple weeks ago and have let them know that we need that information just to kind of incorporate that in our 6-year plan. So they are working on that. But just to highlight, the main project in the Board of Education is the Board of Ed Admin Building, which is funded at $4.5 million for FY24. Total projected over the next 6 years is $17.5 million. For parks, there is a $3.2 million budgeted in FY24 and $30 million over the next 6 years. The main projects being the trail development and the trail development at $10.6 million across the 6 years, And then we also just wanted to point out that we have included the $350,000 for the Sothersville Elementary School playground replacement, which was an enhancement this year. So we've included that in the capital budget. So that brings the total general capital for FY24 to $34.9 million in FY24. For public landings, it's funded at $510,000 in FY24 and $610,000 over the next 6 years. The Bay Bridge Airport is funded at $185,000 in FY24 and $9.3 million over the next 6 years. The bigger projects involve the South Apron Safety Enhancement construction, which is $4.1 million. 90% of that is funded with FAA grants, 5% is funded with MAA grants, and then 5% is the county match. Also included in the airport budget is the North Apron expansion, which is $4.4 million. Again, 90% of that is funded with the FAA, 5% MAA, and 5% county match.
If it's variety, mainly south.
For the roads board, that is $6.6 million in FY24, $59 million over the next 6 years. The bigger projects are the asphalt overlays, the Thompson Creek connector, which is 100% grant funded, and also the pedestrian bridge crossing at US 50 and 301, which is also 100% grant funded. The total for the sewer enterprise is $5.78 million in FY24 and $23 million over the next 6 years. In FY24, $5.4 million of that is the ski projects, phase 2, 3, and 4. Then the total water enterprise projects are $4.7 million in 24 and $12.6 million across the next 6 years. The major projects in the water fund is the residential meter replacement and the Chester West water main, which is funded with ARPA grants. So that brings the total of all the capital projects to $52.7 million in 24 and $303 million over the next 6 years. So the next slide is just a summary of the funding source for the FY24 capital budget. So we included $8 million in PAYGO funding, which is already included in the general fund as an expense. There's $15.6 million funded with grants. $9.5 million is funded with bonds. Our plan is to keep the bond funding below $10 million. $670 is funded with operating. $9.9 million is funded with fund balance. And then the other is $9 million, which is primarily the ski loans. So that brings our total to the $52.7 million. And then the next slide is just some of the upcoming dates for the work sessions, budget release, public hearings, and when the budget is adopted.
Breathe.
I know. We're running late. I gotta catch up on time. Any questions on the capital budget? I'm sure there are.
Did you repeat that?
No, I can't.
She will
I
at least,
missed page 12.
she will at least 3 to 4 more times, trust me.
Yes, I probably will.
Yeah, Commissioners, we'll have plenty of time to look over these numbers at the upcoming work sessions. We have our first one Thursday. We have outside agencies, sheriff, DES, I believe, and library coming up on Thursday. We had to swap out the Board of Education because they have their teacher gala that same evening, so they're going to be later in the program. So we did swap those two out. So save the best for last, I suppose. But any questions? Or okay.
There'll be plenty of questions later.
There'll be plenty of questions later. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Oh, while these two are here, can we do this two quick? We have two budget amendments, one of which may take a little explaining for the Board of Education. So, and then maybe you want to take a quick recess or after that, or?
No, we got to roll.
Okay, all right.
Push through.
So, all right, so if you want to go to tab number 3, action items, and that will be, let's see here.
Number 5?
Yeah, item 5 on page 28, and this is the budget amendment for the Board of Education. This reallocates some existing budget authority for several capital projects that are not proceeding at this time and puts those funds back over into the Kent Island High School roof replacement project, which the Board of Education wants to try to do this summer, if at all possible. So this totals a $1.022 million transfer of already budgeted funds for the Board of Education over to that roof project.
I move to approve budget amendment CC 39, Board of Education capital projects reallocation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And while they're here, item number 6, Budget Amendment CC 43, is an amendment to establish budget authority for the Upper Shore Regional Council Smart Business Marketing Grant, $30,000. No county funds are requested, just move.
I move to approve budget amendment CC 43, grants economic development.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for being patient this evening. All right. All right, so next on the schedule, we have a public hearing for stuff here. All right, under legislation, tab 7, item number 1, we have a hearing on the redesignation of the historic Stevensville Arts and Entertainment District. So we have Economic and Development Director Heather Tonelli. So, Heather?
So today we need to hold a public hearing for the redesignation of the historic Stevensville A&E District application. The purpose of the public hearing is to obtain public comment to be considered for a submission of an application to the Maryland State Arts Council for redesignation of the historic Stevensville Arts and Entertainment District. The district was officially established in July 2013 and is under the management of the Queen Anne's County Department of Economic and Tourism Development. The Stevensville Arts and Entertainment District is also supported by the Stevensville A&E District Advisory Board, whose members are appointed by the Queen Anne's County Commissioners. The proposed Arts and Entertainment District redesignation is under consideration by the County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County. The designation provides important tax incentives to local artists, developers, and performing art venues. Additionally, the district plans to continue its work of bringing more public art, special events, programming, and support for local artists and the Stevensville business community. A notice of public hearing was placed in the Bay Times and Record Observer on March 24th, 2023, announcing that the public hearing was set for Tuesday, March 28th at 6:45 p.m. at the Liberty Building at 107 North Liberty Street, Centerville, Maryland, 21617. The draft application is available for public review on Wednesday, March 22nd, and it is still available as of March 28th, 2023 at the Chesapeake Heritage Visitor Center at 425 Piney Narrows Road, Chester, Maryland, 21619 during normal business hours. This public hearing will summarize the proposed application for redesignation of the historic Stevensville A&E District. Every 10 years, the state requires a new application to be submitted for redesignation as the Arts and Entertainment District. This year, Queen Anne's County will be applying for redesignation to continue to develop, promote, and support the district's diverse artistic and cultural assets. The Department of Economic and Tourism Development has worked with the subcommittee of the Stevensville A&E District to prepare the application for submission. The proposed district map includes 102.93 acres along Main Street and Love Point Road, and is requesting the inclusion of a portion of the properties along Shopping Center Road. 63 businesses, 113 residential properties, and over 150 artists are currently supported by this designation. It's also an economic development tool that provides numerous funding opportunities and ongoing support from the Maryland State Arts Council. We have now reached the public comment section of this public hearing, and that is required as part of this grant application process. Testimony is to be heard from members of the community for this project. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes.
You got no emails or messages for this? No one here wants to speak, so we'll close the comment section.
Could make a motion, vote on it tonight, right?
A motion the county commissioners approve the attached letter of support for the Queen Anne's County from Queen Anne's County to accompany the State Art and Entertainment District application for redesignation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So I'd just like to make a comment. In my first term, I actually was a city commissioner at the time when Stevensville became an arts and entertainment district for the first time.
So you're getting old, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, well, if you want to do the math, yes, thank you. But so it's hard to believe that 10 years has already gone by. And we've seen some pretty substantial changes to downtown Stevensville. I do have a question regarding the adding of Shopping Center Road. So you mean where Hardee's and Duncan and Willis Tire and Colt Classic?
Called Classic.
So including, so basically that plaza, the entire plaza there?
Yes. Yeah, the plaza, but not Dunkin' Donuts and Hardee's, so starting where Colt Classic is.
Okay, where Colt
And
Classic is,
actually,
and then going all the way
that
over.
first property where there's a drive-through and, what's the name?
Where the
of it?
bank is?
Yeah,
So
not-
it stops at the bank, so it's just literally that plaza?
Yes.
Okay.
The one with Tokyo Bay coming and
Yeah.
El Jefe, yes.
But not the bank at the very, very end that's detached?
Right.
Okay. All right. Very good.
And there's a resolution as well.
And pretty good for 10 years' growth, yeah?
Any other
And this
discussion?
is, I neglected to say, this is Nikki, who owns Tasty Toucan, and it's also the chair of the Arts and Entertainment District, and has put a lot of time and effort into this
Awesome.
designation.
That's what we
I
need.
think that's a nice addition.
Yes.
To the arts and entertainment, adding that shopping center road.
Yeah.
Good
And
idea.
you guys at Taste Toucan have done a great job of creating another destination for people to go to, and
thank you.
activities for them. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I enjoy being part of the A&E and watching it grow. We've got some people who were part of the
Original?
designation still on the board. We've brought some new blood in and getting a lot of energy going on. And post-COVID, we've got a lot of big events planned, and we do see a lot of visitors from the other side of the bridge coming over here to check
We'll take
us
their
out.
money.
As long as they go home.
Wow. Well, they can stay a few days and stay in our hotels,
That's right.
right?
Some of them actually come to live here. I mean, there's a reality there.
Yeah. Wow, that was such a great stay. Let's move there.
That's how I got here.
It's a huge commitment. Thank you.
Jim?
Okay, so with that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you very much.
Then we got a resolution, right? Do we have to adopt the resolution tonight, or what? We have to do both?
Yeah, we can, yep.
Okay. What is the resolution number?
I move to adopt Resolution 23-04, Historic Stevensville Arts and Entertainment District redesignation, and execute the letter of support. Oh, we already said that part,
We already
right?
got that.
Just the resolution part.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Heather, Nikki, well done, all finished. See you in 10 years, right?
You won't see me.
I want to go ahead and introduce the ordinance.
Yeah,
So we just get that done.
Yeah, we can. Under Legislation Commissioners, tab 7, item 2, we have introduction of County Ordinance 2303 for the redistricting plan.
I'll introduce it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cucurino, that's great. All right, that is all we have for legislative. If you want to go to tab 3, we have a couple of action items, and we'll get through this evening. Tab 3, item 1, page 1 through 9 is the Department of Corrections vehicle replacement. This is a replacement of a Ford Explorer from 2016 for the warden under the State of Maryland blanket contract.
I move to purchase one 2023 Ford Explorer per purchase order BPO number 001B2600309 in the amount of $42,529.88 from Apple Ford Fleet Government Sales using the auto vehicles budget line item from the detention center budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved, 5-0.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item 2 on pages 10 through 20 is also from the Department of Corrections. This is for the Medical Assistance Treatment Program, the MAT program under House Bill 116, And this is a request to approve the execute the contract for the University of Maryland to provide telehealth care for the inmates with substance abuse disorders. No county funds are needed for this program.
I move to execute the contract agreement for substance use disorder telehealth services between University of Maryland Psychiatry Associates and Queen Anne's County with funding for the program from medical assistance grant provided by the State Opioid Operational Command Center.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So, just real quick. So I wrote, going over my book, I made some notes here. So we have, look, we have inmates that have various physical issues that, they're diabetic and, so we're required to give them the necessary medicines. And I know this is not a county-funded program. But I guess my question is, if they're inmates, how are they getting drugs? I mean, how are they drug abuse candidates if they're incarcerated?
They get drugs into the prisons.
Yeah, and a lot of them come in.
First off,
Methadone, you ever hear of it?
well, first off, they probably detox them and/or they're giving them medication for their addictions. For that portion of it. And this is a psychiatrist is trying to walk them through a better path in life.
Okay. Thank you, James.
Not a word. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item 3 on pages 21 and 22 is the Mosquito Control Program, Mosquito Control Agreement from MDA. We get this every year. It's for $20,000 for integrated mosquito control management, our program to supplement our user fees.
Start reading that.
I move to execute the 2023 mosquito control agreement with the Maryland Department of Agriculture and to allocate funding up to $30,000 for the program per the agreement.
Second. Got a motion and a second. There'll be no discussion on this. All those
Yes,
in
there,
favor.
whoa, I have a question.
Oh, man. Thought we'd get one by him. Fire away, big boy.
How are we measuring the success of this? I mean, I see the trucks drive through communities and fog down a road, but if you don't do it for the two communities next to it, have the same amount of stormwater management ponds and creating the same amount of mosquito larvae, how are we measuring the success of this?
Todd is out
we
there
throw $30,000
counting all the mosquito bodies.
We throw
and
$30,000,
knows.
$35,000 at this program every single year. But how are we measuring the success of it?
Well, the county contribution piece here is only if there's a big outbreak, with West Nile or something. We have that in reserve. Our portion is funded by the user fees, and this state piece just helps to supplement the traps and the surveillance. So they have traps and they do measure, the number of mosquitoes in the area. So every year is a little bit different, but it's a tough one to.
Right.
We could get Beth to do a survey monkey of the mosquitoes and check out how it's.
You know what? It was a very legitimate question.
Commissioner Wilson. It's a good question, yeah.
I mean,
See the test where you put your arm on the thing, they count them?
I don't think there's really any way to do it, right? Because they don't technically measure mosquito populations per se, right? That I've ever heard.
We just want to make sure there's no, serious disease outbreaks with.
And you got to call, I
mosquitoes in
think, to
those
get the
populations.
service, right? Don't you have?
Yeah.
They don't do it arbitrarily. You have to call if you have
Right.
a problem in your neighborhood.
And that's one of the reasons why we went with a community-based spray program. So because we used to do it individual, so, Patrick may get it at his house. We don't do it, Chris, like you said, then you have, but with a community-based operation, we do the whole community as a group, and it gives you better coverage in regions versus just isolated.
Have we ever had to kick in more money than what the initial is?
Yeah.
We have? Okay. Well,
I will say that where I live, the HOA.
Generate some good
Yeah,
conversations.
some HOAs do cover that.
Not pay for it.
I'm going to tell you this later.
Jim is not amused.
I got a mosquito bite for you. All right.
You got that
Thank you
feedback?
very much, Todd. I appreciate your
You're welcome, Commissioner. Yes.
honest feedback.
Hubba hubba. Well, now that the discussion over, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. 5-0.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 4 is a support letter for the Stories of the Chesapeake grant application for Maryland Heritage Areas. This is for walking the Kent Island Railroad
I move to
project.
execute the Maryland Heritage Area Stories of the Chesapeake Grant Application Support Letter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
He even had sign on there, see?
I did. My notes.
Excellent, thank you. You're welcome, Commissioners. Items 5 and 6 were the two budget amendments we approved earlier, so we can skip to item 7. Item 7 is a thank you letter to Senators Cardin and Van Hollen for the federal allocation of $1.2 million to Chesapeake College for expansion of the workforce training program.
I move to execute the thank you letter to Senators Cardin and Senator Van Hollen for Chesapeake College Technology Grant.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion?
I have none. Jack?
What?
No,
I
actually-
wasn't there, Jim actually. I didn't go.
I actually have some.
Oh,
so-
please.
Yes, wow. It was a full house at the college. Every county was there. We were there. Appreciate them for the mobile welding unit, teaching our kids. $1.2 million. And I truly do appreciate that. However, I saw on the news last night that they gave $3 million to the dirt bikers in Baltimore so they could have a track. Ugh. So that's all I'm going to say about that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? There we go.
Their track will keep them off the streets, right?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
When they crash, they bring them over here to get welded?
Could be. Could be.
No, it's mobile, we can go there.
That's right. There you go.
Few
All
extra
right.
bucks.
That's what they should do. Teach them.
So, is that a wrap?
Yep.
No, I have two desk items, then we're finished. Desk item 1 is the Crumpton and Deep Landing Project for engineering services. This is a contract award for the Crumpton Landing and Deep Landing Boat Ramp and Bulkhead Replacement Projects. Public Landing solicited bids. They got 7 bids ranging from $39,335 to over $196,000. And we recommend the low bidder, George Miles and Bureau of Salisbury, in that for $39,935.
I happily move to authorize the Department of Parks and Recreation to contract with GMB for engineering services in the amount of $39,935 for the Crumpton Landing and Deep Landing Boat Ramp and Bulkhead Replacement Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? How long is it going to take them to do this? Do you know? Is it a month? Is it 3 months?
It'll be more than a month. It'll be several months. I'll get you a schedule. from,
Okay,
our
just
public
curious
landing
because
supervisor.
we've had people asking us.
Yeah, and then what's the RFP typically on these 6? So we're looking at an 8-month turnaround probably, right?
Well, I'm hoping it's quicker than that.
No,
I
we'll
hope
award the
so, but I mean,
contract.
I'm just saying typically that's the time frame, right?
You want to know when it's going to be out for construction?
Yes,
I guess.
right.
Yeah, I'll have to get you that schedule.
Okay.
We'll get that for you next by Thursday even. Yeah.
So the 800-pound gorilla in the room is the discrepancy in the lowest bid and the highest bid. Did nobody, not worry anybody, or?
It's not
I mean,
the first
don't get me
time.
wrong, but
We had that one, remember we had that one
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Lee brought in here where it was like $350,000 difference
Yeah.
between them.
Some people are very busy and said they,
RG, I want to go on notice that I had a concern about this, and then we'll see where we are in 8 months.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
they qualify them all, so I mean, they're.
I
they've gotta be
understand the
qualified,
process,
so.
sure.
yeah, we checked with,
So
I
are
mean,
you
this is a good firm.
saying, low bidder, you get what you pay for? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying. There's an RFP. If they can do the job and meet the RFP requirements, then we did good. I just-
Well, what do we have budget in there? Do you know, Todd, off the top of your head?
Well, this is a DNR grant funded, so
Oh,
it's
so we don't need to
waterway
know.
grant, so whatever it is, but
Gotcha,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
I have no more comments.
thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
All right, and our final item tonight is desk item 2. This is a support letter. We sent this to, or sending this to the Caroline County Commissioners to support the proposal by MES to continue operations of the Midshore 2 Regional Landfill in Ridgely, Maryland for another, well, through at least 2042.
Years, right? Pretty much.
2042, right?
2042, so.
I move to execute the letter of support to continue operations of the Midshore 2 Regional Landfill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? It's a huge win for the county. If
Do
it-
you want to explain the background behind how this actually, because of where the other landfill would go if this doesn't work?
The way well,
Certainly.
the way I understand it was an 80-year agreement, and Talbot did it for 20 years, and they didn't want to do it anymore, and then Caroline was doing it for 20 years, and we're doing it for 20, and then Kent But Caroline has enough room that they're willing to take it for the next umpteen years, essentially.
Yeah, so, you know, as you know, they build cells. Cells are by capacity, and they have 2 more cells that are part of the original agreement, and they're going to build those, and they're going to pick up more than what they're going to need to get out to their final year per the contract. So they'll be getting a portion of the tipping fees, a portion of the recycle, and hopefully that adds up to about $1 million a year that'll go into their coffers for something that they don't have to do anything to.
Run by the state.
Yeah, so.
Queen Anne's County benefits because
That's right.
we don't have to host it.
Well, we're going to host it, but we don't have to host it until 2042, and
Well, and let's do the environmental side of this. So they capped Talbot early
Yes.
because recycling proved to be very beneficial to the fact that you did not fill these landfills up at the pace they thought. So they actually capped a landfill in Talbot that could have gone another, I think the estimate was 12 to 14 years. So this is making full use of the space that was allocated instead of capping it and then not allowing it to be reusable for another 10 years anyway. So like Jim said, it's a great win for Queen Anne's County in terms of now we have an opportunity to also look for maybe another place to put it here in the county for the next
Instead of
19 years.
Centerville?
Instead of downtown Centerville, yeah. Hey, but we got cannabis, so. I mean,
that's right. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure which would smell worse.
So that's the end of that discussion. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay.
That's it. We're going into press and public comment. You got anybody? Would anybody like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close press and public comment. What did we do last year? Who started with last year? Was it 5 or 4 or 1? Okay, we'll start with 1. Jack, you're up.
So I'm literally not going to say anything tonight because the end of the session is, I think, the night before our next meeting. So I'll wrap up all the chaos and circus that is Annapolis at that meeting.
And I will defer my time that evening and the following meeting to you.
Yeah, there's still a lot going on. But honestly, all in all, I'd have to say, and Chris can chime in, he was in on most of the MACO meetings. It wasn't as bad as I think people thought it was going to be. There are, don't get me wrong, there are some bills out there that should just stay in the drawer and go away. But, you know, all in all, like we brought up the one that's very concerning with the solar permitting, and we're working hard to try to get that one defeated. But, yep, I'll wrap it up on the 11th. Sin dies the 10th, so.
Okay. Patrick, you're District 2. Got anything?
Any pearls of wisdom that I should be expecting for the budget process going around to different places?
No, I think
Actually, I will tell you honestly, to answer your question, our staff is so thorough that I don't think it'd be as difficult as you think, and I don't think you have anything to worry about.
I'd say the Board of Ed, in my experience, Patrick, has always been the contentious one, and you'll either get a lot of people out for that, or you'll get nobody out for it.
Yeah, but we've also made a lot of strides with working with the superintendent.
We've got 3 years left to do this, and there's a lot going to happen. There's going to be a lot asking for a lot more money in the next 3 years than what they're asking for right now.
Yeah, but that's a lot coming from the state level, right? That's pushing it down.
Not really.
I think.
It's supposed to.
Yeah.
But it's not
No,
right
I'm saying
now.
the state pushing it down to us.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they already cut us this year. Well, we'll go over it, I'm sure, in the budget, but they cut us $1 million this year. So if they continue to do it at that rate, it's going to get a little expensive on our side.
Yes.
So you all, since I'm still on the floor here, you all got an invite to the May 5th planning meeting for the Carter Center, Whitsitt Center, and what to do with the vacant part. So if y'all could respond to that.
I thought 2 people already did.
I did. I know I did, so.
So if you got 2, we don't want to take a quorum there.
Okay.
So and Patrick, that's pretty typical anyway. If you've got 2 going somewhere,
okay,
sending a 3rd, 4th, and 5th is, I mean. You have
Good?
people out there that-
Patrick, you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Saturday night, I had the opportunity to attend the Sheriff's Award Gala that he puts on each year to recognize the men and women of our Queen Anne's County Sheriff's Office and the excellent work that they do. It was a great night, And it was, there was also a point in the evening where they recognized one of our assistant principals and athletic director at one of our high schools for coordinating with our resource officer the investigation and ultimately the arrest of a pedophile who was targeting our youth here in our county, and with the help with the Maryland State Police, they were able to abduct this gentleman, and it all started with one of our students and our athletic director. So, yep, smart kids at our high schools, recognizing the trash that are carousing our social media.
Good.
So, yeah, it was a great night.
Awesome. Anything?
Not this Saturday, but the Saturday before, the Ken Island High School dance team went to the States. We talked about, basketball and all that, and they won first place.
Really?
In jazz, hip hop, and lyrical.
Really?
Yeah.
Very eclectic.
Awesome.
Yeah, and one of the dancers got second place in the jump competition, and her name is Isabella Corcorino.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
you may know her. So
Can you spell that?
I don't know how to spell that.
Okay.
No,
You
pronounced it
no.
right though, right?
Yes, I got that one right. So congratulations to the dance team for all
Really?
their hard work. Yeah.
Good. Very good. Really good. How many are on the team, do you know? Is it a lot? Is it a big dance team, or is it?
Yeah, about a dozen probably.
Yeah,
Give or
good,
take. I'm
good,
gonna get in
good,
trouble
good.
now. Thanks for calling me out for not knowing the.
No, that's okay. I mean, some of them go in there with like 30 of them. Some,
And some of the competition was
Yeah.
those big teams, and so they were competing against some very good teams. So they worked really, really hard.
Kudos. And they didn't get a bus ride though, did they?
Which I was reminded of.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe we could, if there's only a dozen, I think we might be able to throw them a meal or something.
should have done
a
something,
celebratory,
pizza or something.
Some kind of meal, yeah. Okay.
How about we have the dance team here at a commissioners meeting and do something special for them with certificates of accomplishment?
Your proclamation.
In fact, I think we should do that. Not necessarily a proclamation as much as certificates
You
of
don't think they'd like
accomplishment.
a pizza instead?
They probably like pizza then.
They probably want pizza instead.
They don't want to come here and stare at us, I'm sure. The pizza would definitely be.
Please extend that offer
I will
to
do
them,
that.
to have them here at a commissioners
Uncle
meeting.
Phil's going to buy pizza, that's
Yeah,
what I
I'll tell
heard.
them.
All righty, well then, I'm just to say last Thursday, awards. Last Thursday, we had the awards for the county
Employees, yep.
over at the Kramer Center. It's always a good time, good food, good laughs. Some characters coming up there that have been here for a long time that are staples of the community. So I look forward to that every year, and it was a good time. Next Wednesday, Bay Bridge Reconstruction Advisory Group meeting. I hope we can get some media there because I think the public needs to start hearing what's going on coming up, ramping up to this redecking. Steel plates are coming back, and that's it's just.
Do you want to share the news that the state has decided to back out of Langenfelders?
Yeah, that's been said a lot, but yes, it's the contractor. It's not the state, it's the contractor. Contractor's opted to go somewhere else with his manufacturing. My only question then is, since they left, part of the deal was that was going to get all,
They still are going to do the bulkhead improvements, though.
but the bulkheads don't do anything for us. DNR's keeping those. So, the
grass, the trees.
The grass, the trees, the cleaning up all the gravel and all the contamination. I don't know if that's even going to proceed now, because I thought maybe the contractor was paying for that, so.
Well, if the contractor's going away, then I imagine that's going away.
And so that means no use for the citizens of that property, so. I'd like to see it opened up to the county, but not if we got to pay to clean it up, so, that's a shame. So anyways, that's all I got. Motion?
So hopefully they're not going to dump off of our island, right, the cement?
Well, that is,
That's still up in
I
the air,
think
right?
that's still unresolved, right?
well, we can talk about it
Next
at the
meeting.
brag, but, I mean, they took the old concrete from the redecking project, and that's where it is. It's in the bay. It's all made for oyster reefs. So, my understanding was they weren't going to crush up these sections. They were just going to drop them in for reefs. And, you know, and reefs aren't a bad thing, so.
No.
But
And if they could just,
But
if they could just dredge Man-O-War Shoals, it'd be
We
even
would
better.
love to see that. I'm with you on that, Phil, you know that.
Which actually, there's a movement again. to do that.
75-year-old.
I sure
What's
hope.
that? There's a movement again to push that again.
Yeah,
So-
the Man-O-War Shoals, we'll hope they can get see through the light there.
Well, we can kick in that can for what, 12 years
Well,
now?
not get rid of a ton of sediment too, that's just sitting there on it, because it's not
But all
getting
that,
churned
but
up.
all that shell that we
I know,
need
but
for
my thing
planting
is-
on these
Right.
reefs.
But that's what they were saying, is all the sediment that's on it now, where you would turn it up and it could get re-filtered out. Right now, it's just sitting there, and every time we get a storm event, it's just
piles
moving
up.
it even more.
Margie says we have to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?